Hello, and welcome to another episode of Treasury Talent's LinkedIn Live Chats with Treasury Practitioners. I'm Joe Grabowski, joined as always by Simon Lynch and Scotty John. We are joined today by Jason Roof. Jason is the director at GPS Capital Markets. He'll be chatting with us about his career, his views on networking and relationships, and much more. We do have questions we will be asking Jason, but this is an open invite to the audience who's watching. Scotty is on mute right now. He'll be monitoring the conversation for questions that come in from the audience. This is your opportunity to have those questions answered. So if you have them, please ask them. We'll make sure that they do get asked to Jason. Jason, I'm going to flip it over to you. Thanks for joining us. How are you today?
Great, thanks. Thanks for having me here. Thanks for the invitation.
No, absolutely. Where in the world are you located?
I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina in the U.S.
Perfect. So you have that nice mix of maybe a mild winter, not so much the 3 degrees as it was when I woke up this morning.
Yeah, it depends on your perspective whether this is a winter or not. But we'll have something that resembles snow next week, I believe. But those in the Rockies and other parts of the world wouldn't call it snow.
Perfect. Well, with that, Simon, I'm going to flip it over to you. Let's kick this off.
Hey, Jason, you've had a really great career across banking, into corporate and sales and consulting, pretty much covering all of the different areas that cross over into Treasury. How would you describe making the move between those and advice for others in the audience?
I think be willing to change and to adapt are very important. Don't be rigid. Always be willing to learn more, and things that you don't know already, and be willing to learn and to adapt and grow. To not know everything right away, and to ask for help from others. If you're new in an environment, you might know one very well, the other not. Whether you're coming from corporate to banking, financial services, or the other way, usually someone's willing to help. So don't be afraid to ask questions as well. It will only help.
Did you find it easy, Jason, making that switch? I know we get asked the question a lot, both ways. And it doesn't tend to be an easy move. How would you describe it from your experience?
No, that's an accurate. It's my experience as well. So I've noticed that some corporates are open to those with banking experience. My initial reaction was, "Hey, I've dealt with many kinds of companies throughout the years. You gain a wide variety of experience and knowledge. Why would not be valuable?" That was a bit self-serving and to be honest, but some value it and some don't coming from that. So, and then I'm thinking one individual personally, or where I worked at SunTrust, came over from a corporate environment into banking. So it doesn't seem to happen that often. It is challenging, Simon. And so I think it's a matter of perception and still personalities as well. I mean, they might have a preformed opinion about people from the banking world. Maybe it's compensation, maybe it's knowledge, or willing to work in a different environment. You just never know. So I think you have to keep an open mind. Don't take it personally. You know what you know, and just deal with it as it comes.
I think you're spot on there. Like it isn't a personal thing. It's just a perception, and you just got to find people who understand your background and relate to it to make that move. So yeah, I think that's really great advice. No. Can I just ask you, just to give the audience some background, you're obviously with GPS Capital Markets now. You were on the corporate side as a Treasury Director at LabCorp before that, and Red Hat as an analyst before that, and then some time with SunTrust Bank earlier on, and banking in your earlier career. So just to give some colour for the audience, that's really where you come from. What would you say have been the highlights in your mind in terms of your career so far?
Yeah, I tried to give you the abridged version. I could go, but I would say after graduate school, I was an engineer originally, loved analytical work, but wanted a different kind of analytical work, fell in love with international business, finance, languages, and so on. Used an international MBA to transition over to the world of finance. Worked at a small bank in the international department there, real basic letters of credit, basic foreign exchange for 3 years there. It was a good stepping stone. And then I went to SunTrust after 3 years there, began in the large corporate sales side of the desk, and soon graduated to a senior role and spent about 10 years working with clients of all kinds and sizes in various industries. In 2013, I began to help clients with interest rate risk management as well, interest rate derivatives, in addition to FX. Really valued that experience because I had the opportunity to work more intensely with loans, credit, tactical, strategic finance as well, that many in Treasury see also, and then after that, in a slight divergence from the corporate world, I served as a language instructor of German and English to multinational corporations around the world. So call it a passion project, if you will, while I was out of the quote unquote normal corporate world. But yeah, so and so after a long time, I transitioned into corporate treasury, and I think a recent guest, a speaker of yours, talked about going early on, and I was almost the exact opposite. So it was later into my career when I transitioned to corporate treasury, and it wasn't for lack of interest. It was for the aforementioned, like you say, Simon, challenge of transitioning and finding the receptive audience to say, no, we see this skill set, we can apply it here. And when I joined Red Hat, really, I told them, I've worked with many clients throughout the years, and I come in, you're my client, right? I do the analysis, everything that I did for hundreds of companies before for you. I think that resonated with them, and they were very kind to give me that opportunity. So those two stints in corporate treasury were very, I describe them as almost consulting gigs. In retrospect, they were very short, intense, but invaluable experience. Analysis of massive data sets, identification of losses, process and policy improvement, risk assessment, and so on and so on. So finally broke into that world. That was short-lived for a few different reasons, but happy to be where I am now. I still apply the same knowledge, it's just back to that broader set of clients, so to speak. I help many different companies instead of one with these measures, with all these things, these matters.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the value of the background, right? It's not you have experience only in one environment, this is all you know, and you're trying to adapt to something new. You have to know different environments and what's going on with your clients if you're good at what you do, just because you have to have their best interest at heart. So you naturally get to know the challenges that they're facing, the solutions they're putting in place, and then that adds value when you are dedicated to one client, as you said, when you flip over to the corporate side.
Yeah, precisely. And I'd have to say that I'm a curious guy by nature, and for years, a meeting on the phone or in person, when that was actually a thing, I was always curious. So what do they see in their daily lives? What do they? I know how we interact and what we're working on, but what do they do in their daily lives? And these are smart people and capable people, and why are they so occupied if we're working on something that's a priority, but they haven't responded? I didn't take it personally, but just we thought this was a priority, and they're not responding. But then working in Treasury, it makes you realize how many different priorities pull you in how many different directions. And so that clarified that somewhat. But it was always, what is that like in their perspective? And so again, that experience in corporate Treasury was short, but very valuable to me.
I also think it's interesting, like you're in a similar environment to us where, either your banking experience and now at GPS where you've got a lot of clients. And I think when you're in that consulting, advisory, dealing with lots of different businesses, it's quite addictive because you get to learn so much and deal with so many different people on a constant basis, don't you? That it's actually quite hard to leave that and go back and just be focused on one business with the same clients all the time.
It can be, yeah. That's one thing, and we like to cross-pollinate knowledge where possible. Oh, we've seen the situation over here that can help you potentially as well. That's happening with China right now. The fluctuations in the yuan, we're spreading that message, and it seems to resonate. But very well said, Simon.
Jason, if you could go back in time and give one piece of advice to your 20-something-year-old self, what would that piece be? What would you share with the audience?
So just one thing I can say. So I'm kidding. Yeah, I've actually thought about this recently, and I'd often heard and knew that effective communication is important. That's obvious, right? But what that meant, how to achieve and optimize that skill, was not entirely clear to me or definite to me at the start of my career. So through the years of observation, I believe now I can boil it down. I'm thinking offhand here, elements, the power of asking questions, right? To ask questions that evoke an insightful response and create clarity. Clarity is of utmost importance. For example, what problem or opportunity are we really talking about? Often it's somewhat hidden, right? Communication also to put yourself in the position of the other person. That's not something I've always done well. I continually try to improve that. How does this appear or sound to them? To speak and write succinctly when possible. Some situations are in fact very complex and require, many words. But when possible, communicate in as few words as you can. If it's a negative situation, also, I think pause before responding or reacting negatively. Wait a moment before assigning a meaning to something and reacting. It can also often put the conversation off course and cause more problems. And so also just a bit generally to convey a message or idea that resonates with the recipient and helps to propel the discussion toward the solution, the resolution, the objective, or whatever. And so those are, again, effective communication is a broad term, but I'm thinking how important it is. Of course, knowledge of subject matter is immensely important, but if you can't convey the message, the benefits, the particulars, potential disadvantages, risks, and so on, it can hinder your performance and contribution to the team. I believe in precise grammar, descriptive and specific vocabulary as well. They're all essential and sometimes too neglected nowadays, but generally speaking, communication is extremely important, I view it as. I would say I would emphasize especially questions. That helps me typically. Questions like, what do we do well? Let's acknowledge positives. Questions don't have to be negative. What do we do well already? But also, could this be done better or differently? How can we improve? What do I not see about this situation or challenge or about myself? That's also personal career development. I would say, what do I not see that I can improve? And back to business, what are the flaws in my strategy or idea? What have others done in the situation? What can I learn from them? And so on and so on. So I think power of questions can really help you communicate. I know that helps me. So again, I would just say power of questions, succinct verbiage, other person's perspective, and pause before responding if it's a negative situation. Perhaps that's more detailed than you wanted, but I would just sum it up as the way I was thinking, what is effective communication? I would say really it enables knowledge and expertise to become solutions, right? It embodies them, it makes them come alive, and therefore is of the utmost importance.
What I love most about that, Jason, especially for somebody starting out in their career, we've heard it before, but it's so hard to get over that self-consciousness of asking a question that you think you should know the answer to.
Right.
And to your point, not mapping on to someone else your own thoughts and feelings, et cetera, because they have a different perspective. So when you ask them what they think and just take a minute to listen, you'll learn a ton more about them. So I think that's actually, I don't know that we've had that feedback on this program before. I think that's phenomenal.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's just helped me as well. And that's not, I'm just reading and learning and how to improve. I've always been, no surprise, talkative, but that doesn't mean effective in communication. So they can coincide. But even someone who is quote unquote shy can still, succinctly ask a question that can be very powerful.
And I absolutely love that advice too, because there is an art to asking questions, right? It's not like most people will get defensive right away if you come at them the wrong way with the wrong question, or if you don't form that question. Yeah, me too. You could ask my wife about that. It's just she catches me at the wrong time, and I'm like, why are we talking about this? But it applies in a business setting too. Like there's an art to, hey, why do we do it this way, opposed to, well, why would you do it that way? And it's influx or just the way, the tone of voice, and if it's written, then you're going down a different path too.
Yeah,
so it's effective in written and verbal.
Yeah. And often it can steer off the path that is difficult to come back to if you're not careful.
Yeah. Scotty, just real quick, do we have any questions from the audience before we continue with our questions?
No, not yet. We've got some comments, but no questions up to this point.
Okay. Another real quick shout out. This is an open invite. If you do have questions for Jason, obviously we still have more questions to ask him, but this is your opportunity. If anything that he's saying now, while we're talking about questioning, if you have questions for him, now's your time. So please join in. But Jason, just in the career that you've had, very similar service offerings to what we do. I'd call them complementary, not competitive. But what's been your approach? Obviously, networking and mentorship is important in the line of services that we are in. What's been your approach to both of those throughout your career? And part two to that is, what advice would you give to the audience when it comes to networking and relationships?
Yeah, and none of what I'm about to say suggests that I do it perfectly. Always continually trying to improve. But I would say, and probably things that you would say as well, and maybe that are obvious, but try to give first. The more you give, the more you get. Give without expectation, reciprocity, and build as much as you can. I have some relationships that have given to me first, and I'm starting to give back to them now. Have I ever asked for something early in a relationship? Yes. I mean, sometimes the situation is such that you have to ask first. But you can do so in a non-obligatory manner. Give them. I've always thought, I don't mind. I usually can find a way to ask something if I give them an easy way to say no. Not make someone feel uncomfortable. That might seem like a contradiction there. If this is something that you're not comfortable with, please don't worry about it. So that's something that I've used in the past, sometimes successful. And don't assume that the other person is obligated to you to help you. They're not. Nor are you to them. Some other thoughts that come to mind: plant seeds and cultivate them without expectation for immediate reward. Somewhat aligns with what I've just mentioned. I'll give an example. In 2020, I met a former CFO. He was out of work at the time, and attempted to help him find. I don't do what you guys do, but just I don't have your expertise, but just trying to help, right? Connecting to people and opportunities. If I see something, I forwarded it to him. I communicated my motives to him early on. I said, listen, I want to help you. And if you happen to arrive in a role that has a need for my services, you're not obligated to do business with us. We would like to have the opportunity to present ourselves, but I'm not doing this to build some sort of obligation or future debt to us. And he said, I understand. Thank you for that. Long story short, his wife is the CFO of another company, which is now a client as of last week. So that's a very, and he didn't know that to me. And the fact is, I added something of value to his wife's company. It's not just a favor, but the introduction was a favor. And now we can help his wife reduce expenses, improve processes and such. So an interesting recent example. I would say cultivate it consistently as well. Steadily, regularly, consistently. That helps. It's almost like a garden, right? You have to attend to it. I would look in unobvious places as well, things that don't initially come to mind. The obvious places as well, you should, but I mean, like our relationship, we're trying to cultivate one, and that's might not seem obvious to some, but it is to me. Those things come to mind, and I would say as well, a recent example of something, plant a seed a long time ago that comes to the bears fruit later on. I think it was good, 7-8 years ago that I met Wes Seeger, who works with me here at GPS. He's the reason why I'm here. So we connected on something years ago, and a couple of years ago, he contacted me and told me what he was doing and that they're interested in me, and here I am. So, and I'll mention one more thing on the topic. To state the obvious, it is important to your career, networking and building a network and cultivating it. I think the author is Harvey McKay. I can't remember his name, but in the name of the book included this following quote, I believe: dig your well before you are thirsty, right? Plant the seeds in advance. Don't wait till you need it. I've done both, honestly, if we're being forthright here. And I can tell you that digging your well before you're thirsty is very, and proactively is a very wise move.
Jason, I think that's probably the one thing, the more senior you get, it's the one thing that shocks people the most is they haven't started to dig the well when they didn't need it. And it's amazing how many people come to us when they're a treasurer, they're well into their career, and it's like, oh, I've just been let go, or my role's been eliminated, or whatever it may be. And then it's like, now I need to now I need to start digging my well. And you've kind of missed many, many years of doing that to be able to have an easy opportunity to go back to those relationships. And I think that's the key thing that we make a point of is networking is a word that gets used around effectively when I need a job. And networking is not really when you need a job. Networking is building relationships, like you say, pay it forward, or providing value to other people so that when you need something, they will come and help you out as well. And it's not necessarily like networking is not just about getting your next job. It's very much about building relationships.
It's about your job in 5 or 10 years, honestly.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. So on that, you've obviously been on the corporate side as you know in treasury roles, and you've dealt with a lot of treasurers in your time. What do you think makes a successful treasurer in the eyes of the C-suite?
Pardon the interruption there. I would say, let's see, I've been fortunate to work with many great teams, CFOs, and so on. I can't speak for them, but I would say that someone who is open to new ideas and approaches, pardon me, understands that an opportunity to improve a process or reduce financial waste does not constitute a failure of the treasurer or team. And it's not an affront, right, to them. It's an opportunity to improve. Someone who empowers teammates and gives them room to try and fail. Small falls are okay, right? Trust and correct, guide as needed. It generally enables a growth and a stronger team, and therewith a more successful treasurer. So it's really about being, again, we're going back to being willing to change, ask questions. What could we do better? Does it mean that you've made a mistake? If you can make an improvement, does it mean that you've done a poor job to date?
I think that the other thing on that is people often are in their jobs for a while and then realize that they can make change, as a treasurer. And I think that by doing that and doing things differently and making it better doesn't necessarily mean that it was a failure before. I think that's really important for people to know, is things do change over time, and to acknowledge that and then try and improve it is really important. It's not a slight on what happened before.
Precisely.
So Jason, obviously right now, technology is at the forefront of everyone's mind, I think, especially given COVID and the meteoric rise of Zoom, for instance. So with that in mind, how do you see the role of the treasurer evolving, and specifically with regard to utilizing technology?
Yes. So let's see. We come across this as well in our work. I'll give some broad thoughts, some of which maybe sound obvious. I think that advancements will enable the treasurer to become more valuable and contribute more, because less of her or his time and effort will be required dedicated to functions that can and should be automated. It comes to mind increased usage of software, that organizes financial and accounting data better instead of spreadsheets. Full disclosure, I love a good spreadsheet, but in fact, the software packages can often do a better job. They will continue to provide more accurate, clearer, more quickly, easily available information, which will enable, a word I like to use, enable the treasurer to make better decisions faster. So I don't suggest that more robust systems will prevent all errors. That's just not reality, but there is a direct correlation in my experience between clearer data and better results. Some other thoughts, let me think. More capable systems will enable better proactive scenario prediction and also retrospective analysis. So through an iterative process, you can consistently improve a process, engender better results, reduce errors, so on and so on and so on. Also, this came up the other day with a colleague of mine. We thought about it and said, if there are more systems in place, and the better uses of technology, in those events of natural human attrition or natural when human talent departs, it keeps the process smoother, right? If someone's out on vacation, well, we can't do this process because of that, or they're at a lunch and the door's locked and they have paper files in their office and so on. So things like that come to mind. Another thing comes to mind that I've seen personally, the satisfaction and performance of personnel. I mean, you're in the business of placing talent. Better technology typically, and usage of it, I should say as well, lessens the burden on the treasurer and team. Better spirit. Again, I've seen this personally. Manual, cumbersome, arduous, whatever word you want to use, processes can wear teammates down mentally and physically. Can cause not only mistakes in performance and cause a decline in performance, but job dissatisfaction and in some cases attrition. It can help the spirit of the team, so to speak. So I think said something obvious here. The system, software, and hardware, they enable us all to perform better. Technology, without sounding too philosophical, can complement humanity, not make human talent obsolete. It enables it. These systems help us to do better jobs. They don't make us obsolete. Because if a task is removed from somebody, you might think that that's a detriment to them, but they can also learn something else, do something more. The company becomes better, they become better. That's maybe a grossly oversimplified way to look at it, but that's my opinion. So again, I think all of these ways to look at that will enable the treasurer to contribute the most value, which is really her or his intuition, expertise, and knowledge, the human factors.
No, I love that answer. And that's honestly the first time I think that I recall in these conversations that technology has been plugged into business continuity planning or just general wearing your team down and keeping engagement high, being able to handle those menial tasks. We don't think about the psychological aspect of it. We always think about hey, you'll just be able to be more strategic. I've never heard that approach, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Scotty, with that, do we have any other questions from the audience?
So let me do one last quick refresh, but I haven't seen any come through. Again, we've got some great comments, and we appreciate everybody that's dropped those comments in. Let me just do one quick refresh here, and I will let you know. Hold on real quick. No, we do not.
All right. Well, with that, Jason, we'll take you off the hot seat. Thanks a lot for joining us, especially at this hour of the day. I know it's the end of your workday. Treasury community, thank you very much, as always, for tuning in and for the questions or for the comments. And, we'll be back again, same time, same place here next week. On Fridays, we have Ask a Treasurer. On Mondays, we have Ask a Treasury Recruiter. But Jason, with that, thanks a lot, man. It was a great conversation.
Thank you very much, Joe, Simon, Scotty, everybody. Thank you very much.
All right.